What's up, world, and welcome to the Y'all Radio Show. This is where we discuss issues pertaining to the socioeconomic system and how they relate to everything. Why and how are the fundamental questions. Answer them enough, you get to the truth. I'm your host, Alex, and welcome back to part 2 of my discussion with Deb Della Piana. We're going to cover a lot in this episode. Everything from how politics is a business, to the new government Real ID, why automation is good, JFK and 9/11, and different perspectives in general. So why don't we start off, Deb, with you telling everybody the general premise and what Ungovernables 2020 is advocating for.
All right, so what we really feel is that we're not even going to be able to get to square one unless we make these people afraid. All right, so what will scare them is people who are unhappy on the streets, and people who are unhappy on the streets and did not ask for permission. Look, you can't be serious about thinking that Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin are leading a movement. Okay, they're going there at lunch. They're getting zip ties put on their wrists. They're getting taken to jail and they're getting released. You know, that's not a movement. And now her filming has started again, so we're putting that revolution on hold so she can go finish making Frankie and Grace.
Right.
You know, that's not the way this fucking works,
no,
okay?
Exactly.
Can I just tell you that? Anything that's coming out of Hollywood or a political party is controlled opposition.
100%.
End of story.
Yes.
All right? So we want to go there and make people understand that we came from all over the place and we're here because we're unhappy. The first day is basically, we don't care what your issue is, whether it's 5G, whether it's mandatory vaccines, whether it's endless perpetual war, whether it's, income inequality. The bottom line is, the message is, until this money is gone, none of these ills are fixed. So the first day is going to be basically, like an all-encompassing kind of day, right?
Okay.
Where we talk about issues and we maybe we stop people and, start discussing with them. That's what we're trying to do here, is draw people in.
Right.
The second day will be talking about what's really happened to freedom of the press and freedom of information in this country. And on that day, we're going to be talking about, Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden. What about Karen Silkwood? She was a whistleblower who paid with her life. There's people who have, John Kiriakou, who have been to prison. Colleen Rowley, who tried to tell people about 9/11 in advance and was just basically ignored. We're going to talk about whistleblowers. And the reason we need whistleblowers is because we don't have a press anymore.
Right.
We don't have a free press anymore.
Exactly.
The reason
Great
that
point.
Julian Assange exists is because there's no one there to tell you the truth.
Right.
And by the way, today we have a new person to add to that list. Did you hear about Glenn Greenwald?
Oh, I know, yes. I follow The Intercept, and so yes.
Do you hear what happened to him today?
No, I didn't actually.
He's been charged by the Bolivian government with cyber crimes for exposing Bolsonaro. So he's another guy that's going to be going down somehow.
Oh, wow.
I just posted it before I went on with you. He's been charged in Brazil with cyber crimes.
I saw some of his personal writings, because I signed up with their newsletter or whatever. The last couple weeks or whatever, he's been mentioning the smear campaigns and
he, he went there because after Snowden, he had to go somewhere to live.
Right.
Now he's in trouble there. So, this happens all the time. And I've been saying to people all along, as soon as they took Assange in, they were going to ramp all of this up, and they have.
Right.
And, and people who continue to refuse to see that, you have to understand why whistleblowers exist. They exist because there's no other way to get the truth out.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's what's going to be the second day.
Okay.
Now, on the third day, I think we have the ultimate victims of this system, and those are people who live in the streets.
Right.
So our third day is going to be trying to, talk to homeless people, try to feed homeless people. I do it in Boston every other week with some friends.
I know.
We don't go through an agency. We do our own cooking. We buy our own food. We buy them gloves. We buy them socks. We buy them underwear, whatever they ask for. We use our own money. We try to raise money on Facebook to try to help us out. Mm-hmm. because we're all basically retired and living on fixed incomes. But we also realize there are people living out there in this weather that are our age. And that could be me.
Exactly.
That could be me someday. So now in no way do I believe that what we're doing is changing the system. It isn't. Right. We're just trying to help people out. But ultimately, you know what? The people who are already on the streets need to stand with us on the streets.
Well,
because that's what we're really trying to do here.
Right. I was just going to say that I know you're aware because I mentioned to you, but I live right outside D.C. I used to live even closer until I moved recently, and I'm a little bit farther out. But I can tell you, and you've been to D.C., but there is no shortage of homeless people.
Right. Actually, we were trying to figure out, and you're probably a good source for us, but we're trying to figure out what areas, once we get there, that we should focus on, because we really do want to we're going down 2 days early so that we can buy food for them, put packages together, personal items. We put together up here in Boston, we put together Ziploc bags with, toothpaste and toothbrushes.
Right.
Nail clippers, whatever kinds of things that they could use to take back to wherever their crib is. That's what they call it, their crib.
Right.
And, so we're trying to figure out what areas need it the most so that we're not all over the city, but we can try to figure out the most needy areas. So maybe offline you can tell me where you think we should be focused on.
Yes. Yeah, I will do that. I will try to gather that information for you as best I can. Like I said, I have a friend that actually lives within the city. He's pretty familiar with the area. And so I can correspond with him. But I will do my best to figure that out and get back with you on that.
Okay, that's good.
And you saying that, would be, as with most things, like we were saying earlier, that if people understood the true reality of things, you would be shocked and surprised and all those types of things. And one of the things that I'm positive most people don't realize that has never been to DC is that when you see that White House on TV and it looks all pretty and pristine and you see all the green grass and the big fences and the guards with guns on tops and those types of things, I bet most people don't realize that just a couple blocks from there, you have basically fucking ghetto and Skid Row. And it's when you're there and you see that, and a lot of other places in the world too, but being as this is one of the main places of power and control and influence in the world, to see that and realize this system, it's broke. I mean, it's not broke. It's not, it's what the fuck are we doing? How can you have this? So you have these same people in this building that I'm looking at saying they care about all of us out here. And then you look to your left or your right, basically, and you see all these fucking homeless people and all this. It's just mind boggling. And that's the reality.
How do you bail out the banks to the tune of, they were talking about $1 trillion when Obama did it. If you look at, some of the financial journals and stuff, you realize that bank bailout, people are talking to it in reality being somewhere between 9 and 16 trillion at the end of the day. How is it that you bail out wealthy people like the banksters and you leave these people starving on the streets?
Right.
It's like, I don't get it. I don't understand how people think that's okay.
It's not okay, Deb. And what you're saying, again, for people to understand this, the reason you feel that way, the reason I feel that way, the reason most people feel that way and view it like that. That's what I mean about understanding the pieces of the puzzle. Most people, what you just said, are going to say, exactly. Yep, she's right. How can they do that? The answer is because when you understand the whole puzzle, that is the system that we live by. So money is our God. Money is everything. The last guy I spoke with, actually, Samit, who was on the show, we were talking about that. And that's why. The two questions, like I say in the beginning and like I'm adamant about, are why and how. Those are the questions that always, 100% of the time, will lead you to the truth. If you ask one or the other and you can't answer it, well, then yes, you're stuck and you need to figure out. But if you can answer it and then you go to, okay, well, that's why or that's how. Well, how or why does that happen? And you keep going. And eventually, when you run out of those questions, you get to the truth. And that's the truth that will lead you to everything in this system is the money.
Right.
And
absolutely is.
And so that's why you have that. That's why you have them so-called bailing out banks and bailing out these huge corporations and the airline industry and all this type of shit, because that's what it's about. It's not about, and like you were talking about the military earlier. I mean, come on, everybody should know this shit. The United States spends how much more on defense, like way, way, way more than the next closest country.
Listen, let's put it this way. I believe that we spend more. I forget exactly on what it was specifically about, but it's more than 170 other nations combined.
Yes.
All right. It's some ridiculous number.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yes.
And people are always talking to me about, what about Russia? And I go, here we go. Let's go. Right. That's another topic
put on the
that
Russian
really
gloves.
sets me off. Right. Let me put on my Russian hat for a minute. I want you to listen to me, folks. Let me put on my Russian hat for a second and tell you some reality here. Mm-hmm. The United States has 900 bases in 153 different countries. I think Russia's got 11.
Right.
And I'm wondering who's the aggressor here?
Exactly.
It's I'm not saying that Vladimir Putin is a great guy. We all know he's not. But you know what? Actually, right now he's the only adult in the goddamn room, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I tell you the truth. Again, I haven't extensively because I'm all over the place. Like I said, I kind of take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I look at the big picture, and so of course. Some things I look more in depth into, some people I look more in depth to. But as far as Putin, I have to admit, the stuff that I've listened to him say, I get a lot of times it's a facade and they're saying things or whatever. But the shit that I've seen, that man is on, he seems like he speaks the truth a lot.
Yeah. He's smart enough to know that, something? If we go into something big like a nuclear war, he's going to fry too. He's not stupid.
Right.
I'm afraid the stupidity is here. I'm really worried. We're the only country that has actually ever used a nuclear weapon.
I know that, yeah.
So, and so I don't know why everybody's so worried about everybody else. I mean, if you look at the country of Iran, if you look at the number of bases surrounding Iran that are United States or Saudi bases, I don't even know how you can consider them a threat.
No.
It's unbelievable to me. It really is that people can't look at that and it instantly should turn a light bulb on.
You know why, Deb?
But it doesn't.
I was going to say this, and we're on the same, we're linked here. I can feel it. But yeah, when you touched on that a minute ago, I thought of that because I remember you posted that and I reposted that. And I'll tell you how, because some people, unfortunately, you can't reach. And a lot of people are locked in their ideas and beliefs. And basically, you see things from your own perspective. That's why I said it's important to zoom in or zoom out. And one of the ways I try to explain it is this. We can take the exact same tree, okay? We can look at the exact same tree. But if I'm looking at it from over top and you're looking at it on the ground, we're going to have a totally different idea of what that tree is.
Right.
See, it's literally the exact same thing. But because of our viewpoints and our perspective, we have a different. So that's why critical thinking and open-mindedness is priceless. You have to have that. But I tell you, people like me and you and a lot of people, when you see that image or that's the reality, of course, and you say, shit, U.S. is surrounding this country and now they're supposedly provoking us for a war. What are they, suicidal? It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Common sense and us understanding the truth, we get that right away. But I reposted that and somebody replied on my thing and you know what their comment was? They said, yeah, Iran is the reason that we have all those bases there. See?
Yeah, okay.
But that's what I mean about your perspective and how.
They haven't attacked a country in I don't know how many years. I mean, when you look at the numbers.
Right. People, you just look for yourself. I mean, United States has been in war, 95% of its existence?
It has, indeed.
We are, let me correct myself. I don't use we at all. I had slipped up. I do it out of habit, like a lot of people. But
I do too.
Yeah, right. There's no fucking we here at all. But the powers that be, the true people running this country, yes, they are the biggest aggressors in history. I mean, hands down. And
absolutely,
the facts. That's the facts. That's not me saying this to sound like I know what the hell I'm talking about or I want to make something up. That's the facts. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you got to look at things like that. I mean, common sense. Why the hell is Iran going to provoke us when we're surrounding them, when they know we're aggressors? Why would Iraq do that? Why would any of these countless places that we've invaded, even secretly and quietly over the years? Come on, people, really.
Every country we've ever destabilized, and we have, every country we've ever invaded and occupied has been done for one reason, because they have something we want.
Exactly, Deb.
And, anything the CIA does or has done in its history has been done on behalf of American business.
Oh, if you want to know.
Protecting America's business interests. Every single thing.
Yes.
And that's what I say. We are a plunder nation. That's what we're doing here. We're plundering, There's no question about it. You even heard Trump say we want their oil. He doesn't have any qualms about what he says. He's not diplomatic in the least. We believe not we, but the nation, the powers believe, like all of that American, American exceptionalism.
Right.
It was Barack Obama that said he believed in that with every, quote, fiber of my being. Right? So that means we're entitled to everything.
Exactly.
And I really believe that's this government's attitude.
Well, speaking of what you're talking about too, if people want to see somebody who actually knows, look up Smedley Butler.
Absolutely.
He, at the time and to this day, is one of the most decorated, I believe he was Army, generals, commanders, whatever the hell word they use. He was
a general, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was general. And he has been through, several wars. He's been through several occupations and invasions. It's him. I mean, it's not an audio that's doctored. It's a video of this man, and he spoke out more than once, but there's a famous video of him, and he is sitting there telling you all this, the truth. This is why we went into this country. This is what I did here. I was a muscle man for this corporation. We went here to occupy the fruit industry. We went here. And he says, war is a racket. It always has been. It always will be. And this is so this is the thing that, I try to stress, Deb. Anybody who hears this, no, you're right. Don't listen to me. If you're if you salute the damn flag and I'm okay. Well, do you think that man's a patriot? He put his life on the line. He devoted his whole life to this country and to everything you're saying that you believe in. So you're not going to listen to that man that's been on the inside, that's seen it?
That's right.
One other person I do want to mention is John Perkins. And he's wrote a couple books called Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Yep.
Yes. They are, one of them at least, I think was a bestseller. He is actually featured in the Zeitgeist. There's, clips of him, speaking to Peter Joseph, the creator of the Zeitgeist. But yes, and he, again, this man was an economic hitman for the U.S. government, and he explains in detail how it's done. And they go in first and try to bribe the rulers and say, look, you give us this, we'll give you that, we'll take care of you and your family. If not, then they send in the jackals. That's part 2.
Yep.
Or I forget the steps, but 2 is either the jackals, where they try to assassinate this person or take them out, make the plane crash or bleed their brakes or whatever the case, or blow them up. Or they do the coup, where they send 10 or however many, 20 people, and they do all these things, and then they have somebody film it. And then again, they put it on the media and say, look, these people don't like their leader, and that starts the whole dialogue of, this person's right. See, and that's how it's done. People need to understand that. And again, this isn't me saying this. If you look up Smedley Butler or John Perkins, great writings, and this is what the reality that people need to understand. This is how things are done. I'll just say this and conclude with it. Years ago, it was done through force. This is why, Deb, the U.S. has been so successful in their empire. Well, the U.S. and the Britain, basically the white motherfuckers of the world. This is how, seriously, that they've been so successful, because years in the past, hundreds, thousands of years ago, they did it by force. So you had to have an army. You had to go in. It was a big spectacle. You had to blow shit up. You had to do all this stuff. Now it's done through money. So it can be done very secretly. It can be done behind closed doors, and nobody even knows it happens.
Right.
That's
exactly right.
Right. That's what's vital for people to understand. That's how they have such control and such influence. And another thing that's crucial for people to get, instability is great for business. War is the number one profit-making scheme ever devised. And it's great. So in other words, just say hypothetically, since Iran is on the table now, say we, there I go again, say the United States manages to start a war with these people. It's beautiful for business because the arms industry produces all these arms and all this. And again, actually, see, this is what people need to understand. It's great for the economy because then you're paying more, right. You're paying more soldiers. You're paying more oil companies. You're paying paying. Everybody's making money and paying. So that's good in this system. So, and then it's a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5-fold, because after you go in and you spend all this money on the stuff to blow this shit up and stuff like that, then you come in as the saviors with your same corporations of the construction companies and the Monsantos who own these crops that they mass produce and these types of things, and you come in as saviors. And then you make money off of, and then you charge them. Okay, look, we're going to help you rebuild. I tell you what, we'll loan you $50 million. We're only going to charge you 4% interest, whatever. We're going to help you out here. Right. That's how it's done. Right.
It is how it's done. And here's one more thing.
Sure.
Go look at who owns the oil rights now in Iraq. Anytime a nation thinks about pulling its resources in so that it can be owned by the people who live there.
Yes.
Venezuela is a good example.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm, it is.
That's unacceptable to the United States.
Right.
Totally unacceptable to the United States. Okay?
100%.
And that's where you have a problem. That's where all of a sudden, whoever's the head of that nation becomes a tyrant that we need to get rid of. And that's the way it works, That's the way we do it.
That is exactly right, Deb.
And I'm always amazed that, let's look at Iraq has voted. They're a sovereign nation now that we should leave. What's his name? Pompeo said, we're not going anywhere. Give me a fucking break here.
Right.
Like there are, we don't have, and the other thing is we're totally lawless. There are international rules of law. We break every one of them. We break our own laws here. The government isn't accountable for anything. The only people who are accountable under the law are the middle class and the poor.
100%.
Everybody else gets a pass.
You got it, Deb. You got it. Yeah, well, that's, like I was saying, to me, one of the two ways that society in general, the world is controlled, is through laws. And again, I wrote a piece on that, and I name all the laws, bankruptcy law, foreign law, blah, blah, blah. It's ridiculous. In fact, I stopped writing. I did. And in the writing, I just said, something like to that effect. Like it's exhausting. There's literally a law for every single thing that we do from birth through death. Right. So that's how it's controlled. That's how it's regulated. And
look, did you know that it's illegal for a person in the United States to have $10,000 in cash on their person? Did you know that?
I saw you mention that. I did not know that.
Because look, I had a friend's mother went into her bank, her daughter's bank and try to put $150 in her account for her. Do you know what the bank told her? We can't take that because you could be a terrorist or money laundering, but you can go get a check and we'll put it in. How's that? $150 fucking dollars.
It's
Give
ridiculous.
me a break.
It's ridiculous. It is.
But if you have $10,000 and the government finds out that you have $10,000 in a safe in your closet, that's against the law.
Yeah, why?
And that
what
all
the hell's
started
the point
with
of that?
Because they're afraid of terrorists. That's what they tell you. They're guarding against terrorism. That's not what it is. They're guarding against you using cash. You can't be traced with cash. You can with chip cards, right?
Yeah.
You can with chip cards. You know, like this new license in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. You know, the smart license or the real ID. That's what it's being called here.
Yes, right.
Right. Well, you have a choice. You can either get the real ID or you have to get the regular one and carry a passport. Guess what? I'm getting the regular one and carrying my passport. I am not going to be carrying that freaking license. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I know. You know? I know what it is because I actually had to renew my license kind of recent, and that's when I found out about it. But I mean, do you know exactly what it is? It just has more information on there. Is that what it is? Or
yeah, it's to track you. It's easier to track you that way. It's got more information on it. It's got vital information. I'm not sure, but I think it's got fingerprints. It's got whatever. It's got a way to, it's like all encompassing for you.
Right.
You know, it's got everything you need. You never need to carry. That's the way it's being sold.
Yeah.
It's easier to use. It's all right there. Right. And it's an invasion of your privacy is what it is.
100%.
You know, you're basically being surveilled in a very small way. It looks small. Let's put it that way.
Well, they always package it in a different box and put a pretty bow on it. That's how they sell it to the people. You know,
like these people. You always hear these people who, I'm so excited. I'm going to be microchipped. All these people that are putting chips in their face. I'm going, are you people for real?
It's crazy, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Well,
it's the whole technology thing. People are enamored with technology, and what they don't realize is this government will use that technology for nefarious purposes. That's the way it works.
100%, Deb. And, you know, that's kind of sort of to reiterate again, it all falls on the same line that technology is good. I mean, in and of itself, technology is good. In fact, most people think of technology these days as technology, camera, computers. But technology, technically, was even back when they were chewing shit apart and then they found a sharp rock and they said, hey, this shit better, you know? That's technology. They advanced.
Right.
Technology is great. Technology is what gives you what we have. It's what frees you up from servitude and all these types of things. It's the money system that allows it, as well as everything else, resources and whatnot, to be owned and controlled. So that's the point, is in this current system, the capitalist profit-based monetary system, as long as if we keep it 100 more years, for 100 more years, you're going to have that. You're going to have every piece of technology being used for bad manipulative control purposes.
Right.
And it's not just developed by them. You know, it doesn't have to be Amazon developing this, because say hypothetically, I create something. Okay. And it's the best use. Hey, look, this is great, man. This is an app that see, okay. But you know what happens when that gets big enough or gains enough momentum? It's just going to be bought out by these corporations. That's how things work. See, that's the key. Now they own it.
Right.
Now they control it. So they will then use it for bad reasons. So, that's the point. Until the system changes, all the whining and crying and complaining about all this technology being used, you're right. As long as you understand why it's and how it's happening and how it's being allowed to happen. And I wanted to definitely touch on, kind of like I said, you know, I understand that some people may just listen to one show and whatever. So I kind of want to touch on different things, and it definitely plays into what we're talking about the surveillance state and how they've come up with the best boogeyman they have ever come up with in history. I give the bankers banksters and all these type people. I do. I give them credit, of that they have played their game very, very well. And the boogeyman that they've created now can be anywhere and everywhere. You never know who. And
That's right.
It's called a terrorist. And
right.
How did that start? Where did that come from? I think we all know, and it was 9/11.
Yep, it was. And, and it was designed, and this is what people don't understand. The war on terror was designed to never end.
Exactly, Deb. Exactly. That is true. That's very true. And that's what I mean.
And a point in fact is we never retooled to a peacetime economy.
Never.
No. We kept it the way it was after World War II. We never retooled to a peacetime economy, not a true peacetime economy. We did not.
Well, like I said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, the whole notion of 9/11 is also a business model in reality.
Right.
It's keeping the military-industrial complex fed very nicely.
Oh, major.
And
yeah.
We talk about, we're outraged at Trump killing Soleimani there, and I agree with that outrage. I think that's assassination. Okay, folks. That no matter how you slice that, right? Mm-hmm. But why aren't the Democratic supporters outraged that Barack Obama killed an American citizen? He assassinated an American citizen that he said was a terrorist by drone.
Right.
Why isn't there any outrage there? What I'm saying is, they've made Donald Trump out to be the bad guy. Guess what? This imperialism has been going on for decades.
Exactly, Deb.
There's nothing new here under the sun.
Nothing. Right. It's the same
He's
thing.
carrying out his part of the game. They're all in this together, and this is his piece now.
Yeah, you got it. Exactly. And that's something else that I say is the names change, the situations change, the game never changes.
Exactly.
That's why now people are talking about Trump. Before they were talking about Obama, before they were talking about Bush, before they were talking about Clinton. Way back, they were talking about whoever was president. That's why now people are talking about Amazon and Walmart. And then years ago, they were talking about this corporation and that corporation. The names will change. You have to look at the common thread, the common denominator, what enables and what allows this and all this. And it's the system. I know it's redundant. Believe me, I know it is. But that is the reality. That's the answer. That's why things will always continue, because you're not changing the actual problem.
Right. You're putting a Band-Aid on a machete wound is what you're doing, basically.
Right. These are symptoms of the problem. The Bezos and the Walmarts and the multinational corporations who are polluting the environment, and, all this goddamn plastic you see everywhere. I mean, you see some of it. It's astounding in the ocean and all these different places. And people always, again, I don't like to group people together, but the common reaction to those things is usually the same. They'll use the we. How can we do this? How can we allow the planet to be, because do you really want to know, or are you just saying? Because if you really want to know and you understand the big picture, which again, I can't stress zeitgeist enough. Once you understand the big picture, it all makes sense. And then you're like, now I know, because it's not we. We, the people, don't want this shit. We, the people, don't want to hurt our brothers and sisters locally, nor on the other side of the globe. We don't want to pollute our planet. We don't want this fucking system anymore.
Right.
It doesn't work for anybody. And it's inherent in the system. It's built into the system. It's not a fucking byproduct. It's not a flaw, a kink in the system. It is the system itself that dictates that these things happen. They will happen, and they will continue to happen, and they will continue to get worse because of automation and these things, who in a common sense, totally different system and society would be fucking great. Who in their right mind, think about this, who in their right mind, and I've gone into detail with the analogy. I'll spare everybody here now. But very simple. if you have a business, say these days, that employs 40 people, okay, and they're doing all this manual work, think about it in a common sense, just, fair, whatever society system. If we would want to free these people from this servitude, from this slavery of having to do this shit all the time. So then if you found something that worked better, more efficiently, a machine that could do it, and maybe you only need 1 or 2 people to monitor the machine, in a common sense world, you would say, wow, that's great. Now all these people can help with the rest of the shit that actually needs to be done, and everybody's going to have more time. Everybody's going to benefit more. That's in a common sense world. But in this system that we live by, that's a bad thing. That's bad because now there's people without a job. Now there's people who the politicians will tell you are mooches on the system because they're not working. They're fucking lazy. What the hell are you talking about? And that's where a lot of jobs come from. They're literally created out of thin air. All the financial jobs and all these types of things, they're meaningless. They don't mean anything. And they're just there to provide a job for somebody to do something. Right. So, yeah. But I did want to touch a little bit more on the 9/11. And I saw, I know you get that it was a inside job. I did see somewhere you said something about the Saudi hijackers, and it just made me a little curious. Because I wanted to talk about 9/11 anyway in general. But I wanted to ask you what's your basically idea or understanding of what transpired on that day?
Here's what I do know. Right. What I do know is we supposedly have the greatest military. Right. Right? Mm-hmm. So we knew the first plane was hijacked, right? Mm-hmm. Why didn't we stop the rest of them? We actually told people to stand down. Right. I mean, that's the biggest thing to me. Now, I've been told, and I don't know that it's true because I haven't, I have a whole file on 9/11. Right. Right. I was under the impression that the majority of the hijackers were Saudi. I'm being told that's not true now, but nobody's told me who they are. Right. I got somebody say that's a fallacy, that they're Saudis, but I thought it was that the Saudis were actually, the hijackers were Saudi, and no one ever discussed it. No one ever talked about the fact that they were Saudis. It was basically that, they were, Muslims or they were whatever, but no one talked about how the Sauds were involved in this, except that we do know that the Osama bin Laden's family that was in the United States was safely flown out right after it, even when nobody else could fly. Right. And they were flown to Saudi Arabia. So I actually don't know now if I'm right about the Saudis. I'm looking for some kind of clarification on that because I actually got into the discussion with this from somebody last night. And I said, well, I was under the impression, I read in a number of places that all these people were Saudis being trained in the United States to fly. Who were they? And the guy couldn't answer me. So I don't know if I'm off base on the Saudi thing or if he was just saying it wasn't the Saudis and didn't really know that it was. I don't really know. Well, I do know they were let into the country. I do know that they were somehow being trained, and I also heard that they couldn't fly freaking Cessnas, so how the hell were they flying 737s? Yeah. And that's my big problem right there.
Well, the thing, there's a lot of things, obviously, with 9/11, but
tons of stuff.
In general, again, something I say is just the facts, ma'am. So basically, like I was saying earlier, most things in reality, people don't know. I mean, basically, unless you can prove something, if you can prove it, well, then you know. Otherwise, up until that point, you really don't fully know. You can believe it with all your heart or whatnot. The facts might point there, but how many times, throughout history as things you've been sure about, and then you find out, oh shit, that's not, how could that be, Yeah,
who's releasing those facts? That's what you have to know.
Well, exactly, Deb. That's what I mean, to go down that rabbit hole of, well, who said this and why'd they say that? My point is this with 9/11. I used to when I wasn't alive for JFK, but I was very interested because I've always been the type of person that I am now. You know, I want the truth. I care about people, all this type of stuff. So try to be real short about it. But basically, you know, I know people feel differently about it. You know, they say it was the Oswald, the one man, and then they say, no, it was a government conspiracy, all this type of stuff. And I've seen the Portrayed, or whatever the hell his name was, the guy that filmed it.
The Zapruder film?
Zapruder,
Yep.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, you know, supposedly the only camera of it or whatever. The point being, they say the government's official story is that it was that one guy, Oswald, who was ironically shot by the guy who shot him was a gangster. I mean, most people don't know all that. But anyway, without going on that subject, supposedly it was just one guy who, first of all, was the best marksman in history to hit Kennedy from so far at moving distance with every shot. But
and he couldn't shoot for shit, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah.
And he really couldn't. And the bottom line was his gun was faulty also.
Well, the point, all that is kind of like, I'm going to get back to with the 9/11 of the people can fly or not. We can talk about it, right, and we can try to find facts, but the reality is that's going to be hard to prove. You really don't know. And so same with the Oswald. Okay, yeah, maybe that's the case, maybe not. What we do know, what every single person alive can know for a fact, because you can watch the film. You see this man, John Kennedy, you see his head move two different ways. You see him first get shot and he falls to the side. Then you see the second shot and his head flies backwards. This isn't a guy fucking acting. This isn't a guy putting on a show to make people believe something. This is a guy getting his fucking head blown off, which means that is fact. That is what happened. This man's head moves two different ways, and there is only one way possible in the entire world, in existence, that can happen. And that was, he was hit from two different angles.
Right.
So my point.
That's exactly right.
So I always used to wonder, Deb, and anybody else for the audience, you know, I used to think, you know, man, I know this and whatever, you know, but I wonder if there was like more evidence or more, you know, basically, if it could be proved that it was, again, an inside job. How would people, what would they say? What would they react? What would they do? Then 9/11 happens. And I, like everybody else, saw what I saw. I heard what I heard. They were fucking amazing because within an hour they were talking about it was these terrorists and all this shit. But again, let's not go down there. Let's stick to the facts. Then fast forward, again, I don't have to go through the whole timeline. The point being, the facts, Deb, and for anyone else, regardless of all the arguments in play, the actual facts that anybody can look at, anybody can verify, anybody can prove, is that those two World Trade Towers fell at free fall speed.
Absolutely.
What that means, this is why I love science, and this is why I love nature and facts and things like math and those types of things, because that's how you know something is real and a fact. I don't care what color you are. I don't care your religion. I don't care what you believe, because the truth doesn't care about what you believe. It's not a matter of opinion at this point. Both of those buildings fell at free fall speed. What that means, by the laws of physics that are the same throughout the whole entire universe, this is how scientists know things. They're like, how the hell do you know that this is that far away? Because the laws of physics that we know of, we don't know through black holes and that kind of shit, but what we can observe and what we see, the laws of physics are the same throughout the universe. They do not change. And one of the laws of physics is that things will go through the path of least resistance. Meaning, for those buildings to fall at free fall speed, there was only one way that could happen, and there had to be no resistance from the bottom portions of those buildings all the way down. You understand, right?
Correct.
Right. Yep. Because all this shit, all the FEMA's original pancake theory, which is the one that most people actually remember and sticks with them. They think, that weakened the fucking beams and it happened. And then the weight just crushed the rest like a fucking accordion, like a pancake. You're a fucking idiot if you believe that, because that
exactly right.
Again, if you hold your arm up, from your elbow to your thing, and you make a mark on your arm wherever the building or the planes hit, from that point down, the rest of that building is intact. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that building. So to think that even if you sliced off where the planes hit and you lifted it up and you slammed it down with all the force you could, it's not, the rest of that building is just going to sit there and look at you like, what the fuck was that?
Exactly.
Right. And, it started with FEMA's pancake theory, like I said, which is what stuck. And then when NIST, the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, when they first did their investigation shortly after, they came up with what they call the, actually I forget the name, but they did the little thing and it was a bunch of shit and people pushed and, all the families who lost were affected and all these types of things. And they pushed and pushed finally in whatever year it was, 2012 or something, NIST did its big thing that, again, they spent all this money on, all this taxpayer money on to do this investigation. Their final conclusion was probable collapse sequence was the actual name of it. And essentially, if you look it up, again, I probably will include a link to it so people can just look. This is NIST. This is NIST's website. This isn't me saying this. Basically, what they do is they come up with like 6 different things that they basically are saying all these could have played a factor or did play a factor. We don't really know. But if you combine them all, 6, this is why the shit fell. Meaning they don't know, they're not admitting anything. But the point I just wanted to make about that with the 9/11 is that it does not matter what you believe because it's not a matter of opinion. There was only one way that those 2 towers could have fell at free fall speed, and that was with no resistance on the way down, meaning those buildings were demolished. That is the only way that can happen. And then the actual, believe me, again, I could have a whole, and I probably will have a whole show based on 9/11, but because there is a bunch of facts, actual facts that you can discuss. But even aside from them is the true, the buildings are enough, but the true smoking gun of Building 7. And you're familiar with that one.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's ridiculous. That whole explanation was, it infuriated me, but I was actually laughing at their explanation for that one.
Yeah, it's, it's comical. Again, for anybody who knows, come on now. And anybody who doesn't know, shit, trust me, WTC 7, that's all you got to look up. And you'll see the video that this building, it was about 5.5, somewhere around there, hours later, this building, there's cameras on it. This is what I'm saying about the JFK thing, Deb. There's so much documented evidence that, this building just falls at free fall speed instantly. Like you just flipped a switch. And then of course you have Larry Silverstein, the guy who, had the insurance on the World Trade Towers, who, 8 or whatever months ago took out a huge double policy. After the fact, he fought to get the payment separately, saying there were different buildings and all this type of stuff. But
he got 2 payments, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did. And it was
I think he did.
Astronomical. It was in the billions that this man made off of insurance. And there's him sitting there being filmed shortly after this happened. And they asked the man about World Trade Center 7. And his exact response was, We knew there was so much loss of life that day and we didn't want any more. So we decided to evacuate the building and they made the decision to pull it. And so we pulled it and we watched the building collapse. Almost verbatim. That's what that man says. What that means, pull it, for anybody who doesn't know in demolition terms, that means to pull it, basically ignite the charges and and drop the building. And again, just to conclude, and we can go on, but for me rambling,
We should remember also that would have had to have been wired before the event.
Thank you, Dad. That's what I was just going to say, that people need to understand. This isn't like, oh, well, they just went in there a couple hours before. No. This shit is planning and thought out. That's the only way you can demolish a building. The charges have to be put on the columns and all this type of stuff. And by the way, people, well, how would they do all that? Again, I could go on and on and on, but there was, supposedly they were working on the elevators in the towers prior.
Exactly. And the people in the first two buildings, there were people who were survivors that stated they had seen people in the buildings working on them the weeks before the event.
Yes, so, they were coming in at night saying they were working on the elevators, and the elevator shafts is how you can access the columns of the building.
Exactly.
So, and I just, like I said, this truth. Yeah. This show is about the truth. I mean, I'm all up for open discussions and those types of things, but I am about the facts. And that's what people really need to grasp and understand, that regardless of whatever you believe, I don't give a shit if you believe it was Saudi hijackers. I don't care if you think they were controlling the drones. They were flying those planes and they were actually drones, which I kind of lean towards. And there was no actual hijackers and those types of things. See, that's the distraction. That doesn't matter. It does matter, but it doesn't. What matters is the facts that we can verify, and the facts that was a planned attack. And in fact, the video we played, the audio to the video that we played at the beginning, you mentioned that we were willing to sacrifice, 3,000 of our own people to go to war.
Right. I believe that with all my heart. I really do. And people say to me, oh, the government would never do that. I go, you have got to be kidding me. You really think that they care about us? They don't really care about us. I think people have to understand that.
Yes.
I don't think people get that.
No.
Being a politician is all about power and money. Look, let's look at the facts, all right? Here's a fact for you. Marianne Williamson, let's use this as an example, held a huge fundraiser in New York with Deepak Chopra, right?
Okay.
2 days later, what does she do? She fires her entire staff and leaves the race. Do you think she's given all that money back to those rich people? She's not. She gets to keep that money, and she gets to keep it for the next time she runs. When they say, for example, this girl that's running against McConnell, she's starting with a $9 million war chest because she had it when she ran in 2018 and lost. She got to keep all that money in her war chest. So now she's starting out with $9 million. And let me just say this. If she beats McConnell, she will be the 12th Democrat in the Congress that comes from either the military, the NSA, or the CIA.
Right.
We are being totally infiltrated. We have 11 Democrats that are ex-military or ex-intelligence. She will be the 12th. She is a Marine fighter pilot. Okay?
Right. Well, that's something, Deb, that you do, and I want to make people aware of who haven't watched your videos and those and your writings, that you point that out. And you, again, don't just, you talk, of course, sometimes like we're doing, but you verify it, and, you put links and those types of things. And you, I think, do a huge role, and you play a huge part in putting the pieces together, like I've been saying. You really do. And that is a vital piece that you've pointed out, I'm sure, before, and I've seen you point out recently, is how it's like one big family, basically, and they hire their friends, and they're all tied into the corrupt military industrial complex and defense contractors and insurance corporations and all these things. That's who is in politics. That's who's in the White House and the Congress and the House and all that shit.
Right. And here's the other thing that people don't understand. I'm pretty sure this is not talked about much, but I talk about it a lot. Mm-hmm. You're newly elected and you're just starting out in the Congress, right? So you're a freshman.
Right.
Do you understand what the first thing is that you are told to do? You are told to start your leadership pack.
Right.
And that leadership pack means you get to raise money so that, say I'll use an example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That was the first thing she did when she got to D.C., was start a leadership pack. Mm-hmm. What that allows them to do as freshmen is build influence. And guess how? By donating money to, say, Cory Booker's presidential campaign.
Right.
Or give money to, say, Dianne Feinstein's reelection campaign. So right from the day you start, you understand that you build influence in Washington, not by your ideas.
Right.
But by how much money you can fucking give out and how many ways you can bribe your fellow lawmakers.
You got it.
That's exactly what this government is all about.
You nailed it. Yes, Deb. Yeah. And one of the ways I try to relate that, to put it in a different light and help people to understand. Again, it's really common sense. It just makes sense if you think about it. But if you go to a job, what happens? If you go work somewhere right now, any company or corporation, when you get hired, you go in there and they say, this is how we do things here. Right? I mean,
yep.
How many jobs do you know, especially something like politics that's so big and influential and controlled? It's not like, well, yeah, this is mom and pop corporation. Yeah, maybe you go in there, they might say, hey, you got any ideas? But no, even most major companies or corporations you get a job at. What happens when you clock in every day? You enter a dictatorship and they tell you, right, this is what you do. This is how you do it. And does anybody think for a fucking second that the biggest, most influential, most powerful, corrupt system, aka politics in the world, is going to be different? So that's what's vital, is exactly what you're saying. I mean, those are the steps they do. Yes, they go in, they immediately start trying to make money and do this types of thing, but they're entering this business, this company. And imagine if you or I or anybody gets hired to a company and you go in and you go fucking rogue on them and you're like, yeah, look, I'm not doing that. That shit don't make any sense. No, what we're going to do is, what do you think is going to happen?
You're going to get fired.
Right.
That's what you're going to do.
Right. You're going to be fired. Or in politics, you're going to be shamed, shunned, and whatnot, and people's going to distrust you, and they're going to paint you in a bad light. That's another thing with controlling information and people's personal. You have 100% control. You can make it.
And I promise you, if you do not toe the line, you will not get support from the party to get reelected, and they will probably run someone against you.
Right, Deb.
And in a primary, that's the way the system works.
Exactly.
They want you to toe the line. And that's exactly, I don't care if you're, I call them the 4 horsewomen of the apocalypse, the 4 freshmen that were elected.
Okay, yeah.
They're all controlled opposition, every fucking one of them.
Right.
And anybody who hasn't been able to figure that out yet, I don't know how I can help them.
Well,
it's just.
That's a big word. I mean, and that's a crucial word, is controlled opposition. I like it, and it has a lot of meaning to me, and it defines a lot. Because like you were saying, that's, people going into these things, they seem very independent. They seem like they're for the people. And even if hypothetically they are at first, that it won't last. And the same with all these marches and movements. Like you were saying earlier, and you point out in your videos with facts and stuff that these things are controlled opposition. It's the same way a coup is done to make some leader look like they're bad or they're poisoning their people or stealing or whatever. It's the same way these fake marches and all this shit is done. It's to distract people.
I've criticized Greta Thunberg, okay? And I get criticized because she's a child. I just want to talk to you for a minute.
Well, you said it. She's a child. Go ahead, though.
Right. All right. Let me just say this. Mm-hmm. Greta Thunberg's parents are pretty well off, okay? Mm-hmm. There is no way Greta Thunberg, the average... Let me just say, what if it wasn't Greta Thunberg? What if it was, a poor kid who decided they wanted to get involved, right? Would they have shown up at Davos all of a sudden out of nowhere to talk to world leaders? Would they have she got a Tesla from Arnold Schwarzenegger. How anybody can believe that this is a movement of the people is absurd.
It is.
It's absurd.
It is absurd, yes.
It really is. Her mother's an opera singer. Her father is in the movie business, all right? They're wealthy. No one's ruining this child's life. She's got a car, okay? She got a car out of the deal. She won the pre-Nobel Peace. They nominated her for the fucking Nobel Peace Prize.
Wow, I didn't know
Can someone
that.
help me with that?
That's amazing.
She didn't win it, but she won the pre-prize. She got $100,000. She won the one for kids before that was announced before the actual Nobel Peace Prize the nominations came out.
Wow.
She's already set for life. She's shown in pictures talking to the Pope, fist bumping with Barack Obama. This is not a movement of the people.
No, exactly.
I don't care what you tell me, okay?
No, exactly, Deb. You're right. And, you got to question anytime, again, in a controlled. I mean, everybody should understand shit is controlled. I mean, from everything, from the politics to the media so yeah, you might hear these things emerging or, this individual type thing emerging, but 9.9 out of 10 times, it's exactly what we're saying. It's controlled opposition. These people are put there. And,
right.
To the illusion of, yeah, let's rally and, blah, blah, blah. And you're following, it's the blind leading the blind. You're walking off the cliff with this person.
Right, like the kids staying out of school that day, they were all given permission. How is that civil disobedience?
Yes.
That isn't civil disobedience. Give me a break. Okay? It's like it flies in the face of logic is what it does. So she takes a green catamaran, right? A boat, right?
Okay.
What they don't tell you is they had to fly 5 people to drive it across the world to get to where she was so that they could so they could get her back on a green boat. So they're spending airline fuel.
Right.
To get on a boat that's green and send her back to where she came from. People have to put the picture together, folks. I mean, you just got to see this for what it is.
Exactly. Really. Yeah, it's all tied together. I mean, like you were saying, though, true change, true revolution, it always has and always will come from the ground up. What people have to be understanding of, is, again, 9.5 or 9.9 out of 10 times, these people, anybody, whether it's Greta Thunberg or anybody else who you see all over the media and all the, hey, they don't put you on there because you got a pretty face or, well, they do, but you know what I'm saying? Because you have a pretty face or because you're saying something, because everything is money. So who's paying for you to be on TV? Who's paying for you to fly around the world? Who's paying for you to... Right. So logic, like you said, should say, wait a minute, I understand money is God in this system. Everything is money. Everything is controlled. How is this shit happening? How is it possible? This isn't some poor little village girl that, started speaking out against the climate. And then, it's unrealistic. I mean.
Yeah, let me just say this. I will say this here. If this were a poor little black girl or a Hispanic child, she wouldn't be getting any of this press. I'm going to say it out loud.
No,
I don't care what anyone says. It's all horseshit. All of this is just, you need hip waders to live in this country now. It's just like there's so much bullshit everywhere.
Amazing.
It's not even funny anymore.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's to the point of outrageous, which turns into rage. And that's
right. And I was actually almost thrown off YouTube for criticizing the whole David Hogg thing,
Who's
but
David
you know
Hogg?
what? Kids have been used let's look at advertising. Kids have been used in advertising forever, right? How many times have you seen a politician take a baby out of somebody's arms and hold them and kiss them on the forehead? You know what? Those people are planted in the freaking audience just so that they can do that.
Of course.
They have been using kids to sell you forever because no one will criticize a child.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's really what it is.
Well, it's like something else I mentioned, actually, one of the previous shows I did, and it's true. Human psychology actually is quite simple, and obviously the powers that be, who essentially control the world, you think they don't understand this shit? So it's very simple and easy to see, but that's emotions is what I'm getting at. Emotions is what make us compassionate and caring and those types of things, but they're also what makes us gullible. And what makes us susceptible to lies and those types of things. Exactly what you're saying. See, they play off of emotions. So they'll hold the kid, or they'll parade a kid like Greta or these types of things because it tugs at your heartstrings. You're like, yeah, the kids, man. Or the same way, to start a war or invade a country, they'll drop some poison bomb or something and say, look, they're poisoning those people. See, and then you're like, it tugs at your heartstrings. Oh my God, that's inhumane. That's crazy. Yeah, we got to get this person out. They're playing off of your emotion. Yes, folks, the real doesn't stop on this show. But we don't want to play off your emotions. We just keep it as honest and real as possible and hopefully shed light on the dark and bring the truth to the surface. As always, I want to thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope you got something out of it. That's what this is all about for me, trying to inform, educate, and inspire people. The sooner people realize the veil of lies we've bought into and that we already possess all the knowledge and technology we need for sustainability and abundance for everyone, the sooner the transition can start. Please feel free to email, follow, share, comment, like, subscribe. I welcome any and all feedback and support. And I hope you'll tune in next time for another episode of the All Real Show. We are one.